Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live. I'm your host, Joshua Lane. And now in studio, we have Richard Millard with us, who is a international business person who was in Japan for a long time, a decade, and discovered a device there, which he calls now the FlexxiCore Passive Exerciser, which he found when he experimented with it in Japan was very good for his health. Richard, welcome to Here's to Your Health.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Happy to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Thank you. And you're from Great Britain.
That's right, yes. I live in England now. I spend a lot of time abroad, but as you said, 10 years of it was in Japan, and the Orient has influenced me quite a lot.
And so your device, what do you call it exactly?
It's the FlexxiCore Passive Exerciser. It's a little machine that sits usually on the floor. It's used in practitioners' clinics, but it's also suitable for use at people's homes. And typically people will have a yoga mat on a carpet and they'll lie down. Their feet will be elevated slightly on a little cradle that sits on the top of the machine. And I think we'll see it in a little bit.
We'll see it in a second, yeah.
What the machine actually does is simply to swing the feet. And that comes out of a tradition in Japan. Long before the machines were invented, they had an awareness that creating this pulsing motion in the area of the pelvis was stimulating our energy system in a very useful way. And it is called in Japan goldfish exercise.
Goldfish exercise.
That's right. If you can imagine the very elegant movement that you see in the back of a goldfish, or indeed any fish that as they swim along, that is the motion that in a way, or oscillation if you like, that happens in the spine of our body when we enjoy this exercise.
I see. It's a lovely reference, isn't it, to the goldfish? It's a very gentle reference. Lovely.
Indeed, yes. In fact, in Japan, as I said, the exercise motion itself was called goldfish exercise way before the machines were invented. And they would do it in two ways, really. There was a teacher who started teaching this method back in the 1920s, and he would teach people to create it themselves by a sort of crawl motion on the floor. And also in therapy such as shiatsu, that's come to the West, is quite well known here now. One of the movements that the therapist will do typically at the end of a session is to take the ankles of the person and swing them from side to side, creating that same pulsing motion in the pelvis.
And the thinking is what about this motion?
Well, the Japanese and the Chinese indeed believe that the core of our energy system is down there below the navel. It's called the hara in Japanese, famous from harakiri. That's why they use that part, because that they consider that is the core of their being. And the Chinese call it dantian. If you think of exercises like Tai Chi and Qigong, a lot of use is made of that particular part of our trunk. And in Western terms, the autonomic nervous system is going up through the spine. And that, in our Western terms, if you like, is what is being stimulated by this movement.
And so and some people today in exercise classes, they use the term core quite a lot.
Indeed.
And they kind of borrowed it from this earlier term.
Well, I think all sorts of people are realizing we do have a core which travels up through the spinal column. And in yoga terms, you have the chakras, which are up through there. The Chinese talk about it in a different way, but it's really the core of our nervous system, of our energy, and everything is radiating out from there. And so when you stimulate it, you are actually helping the body to get some of the effects that naturally we get when we do normal exercise. The difference here is that you're lying down, you're making absolutely no effort, and some people, referring back to the conversation that you just had with Kelly Wright and Benjamin Franklin, the term no pain, no gain.
It's interesting that
Yeah.
much earlier term, right?
Yeah, we all know that, and in general terms, we think we need to make effort. But what's happening here, it's very interesting because the body seems to realize exercise is happening. We know that because the breathing changes as soon as this motion, this oscillation it starts to happen. The breathing naturally changes. So brain, body, nervous system, they're saying, okay, let's have some good quality breath here. And the circulation of blood, lymph, and the energy systems themselves, they are getting stimulated here. And so just a 5 or 10 minute session, people will just be lying there. The machine is doing all the work, but at the end of the session, they will realize they feel quite different.
And this machine, what's it called again?
Well, we call ours the FlexxiCore Passive Exerciser. It's been developed over some time. As you mentioned, Japan was the origin of the idea of having a machine that people could use at home. Mm-hmm. There's another strand to the history of our machine because in Canada back in the 70s, a guy who was working with spinal health invented something called continuous passive motion. And that was much more sophisticated equipment. It was designed for people, with real back problems. And what we have realized working with these machines, I've been involved now for about 10 years, is that as well as the energy benefits, which the Japanese were focused on, there's a lot of benefit in terms of back care. So the FlexxiCore has a very gentle starting speed. The original machines that came out of Japan had quite a high fixed speed, just one speed. We've got a variable speed. It starts at a very gentle 80 beats per minute, and you can precisely take the speed up in increments of 1 right up to 160. If you're really fit, a martial arts expert or something like this, you might want to go to the top. But most people will find the starting up to mid-range speeds are where they're getting the benefits. And we, interestingly enough, find that it doesn't make it better to go fast. As long as you're getting this pulsing motion down here, you've got the business happening. But in terms of back care, you've got a very nice mobilization of the whole back while your body is fully supported. So the interesting combination is of stimulation, as I've been talking about, but also the brain is able to tune into this regular rhythm, realize it doesn't have to do anything at all, and it lets go of the tension that normally we are holding. Typically we go to bed and relax to some extent, but get up in the morning and still there's a lot of aching.
Sure.
There are different ways to release that, but this is a very, very good way. It's very simple, takes a very few minutes, and it's actually very pleasurable. So back care has become, one of the attractions of this exercise.
The machine is called what again?
The FlexxiCore Passive Exerciser.
FlexxiCore Passive Exerciser. Okay, we're chatting with Richard Millard, who brought it over from Japan, and then of course you updated it and you changed it. Mm-hmm. And we're going to take a short break. Nestor, a sound person, we'll take a short break, and we're going to come back, and Richard's going to show us the machine on camera, and we're going to have our model, Raphael Cohen-Bacry, will be the subject. So we'll be right back. So please stay tuned to Here's to Your Health on LA Talk Live.